Hey, what's up, guys? Richard here, back with the revolutionary Hexagram series based on the book I Ching Oracle, The Cosmic Way, which, if you're into gene keys and human design, I think is absolutely essential reading for you to get and understand the broadest, cosmic meanings of all the hexagrams, the true meanings of the hexagrams and what they actually represent. And all kinds of other insights into how the world really operates is what we're learning here. And this is just completely revolutionary information that's going to change the world in due time. I really do believe that. And it motivates me to get off my ass and do stuff when I'm reading these hexagrams. That's how inspiring it is to me. And I feel as though I'm kind of going through transformation myself as I actually speak these words. The I Ching is, after all, properly known as the book of transformation, not the book of changes. It's very, very important to remember that. So here we are with hexagram 44, coming to meet, heaven over wind, the judgment. Coming to meet, the influence is powerful. Coming to meet refers to the cosmic principle that it is attraction which draws complementary aspects together. It does so in its own time without the need for pressure or contriving. When allowed to take its time and natural course, everything matures and completes itself in the best possible way. All of this occurs in the atomic realm through transformation, creating a unity that endures. Another cosmic meaning of this hexagram is related to its being one of the so-called calendar hexagrams. It stands for the first month after the summer solstice, when the dark begins to increase. This is pictured by the first dark line entering at the bottom. This single dark line reflects the process of something emerging from non-form into form. It also reflects the process of conscious recognition of an emerging insight. The influence is powerful refers to the ego, which is outside this creative coming to meet process and attempts to insert itself. This happens, for example, in meditation, just when an insight is emerging that would transform a situation. The ego interferes in the way that insight expresses itself. It seeks to appropriate it to its use or to cut it off through impatience, thereby distorting its meaning. When a person allows the ego to interfere, the result is not transformation, but change, which does not lead to duration. The influence is powerful is also a warning not to allow any negative influence that is drawn by self-doubt, guilt, or fear. Therefore, the judgment warns of temptations that come to a person from the collective ego in the guise of help. This guise may appear as protection, security, power, qualifications, authorizations, education, honors, or stature. Behind the temptation to accept these offers is an inferiority complex instilled in the person's psyche during childhood. It consists of false phrases and images by which he has been declared helpless, disabled, insufficient, unqualified, not authorized, not educated, lacking, and guilty, all of which have made him feel at risk and insecure. Being taught to distrust his own innate abilities, senses, and cosmic gifts prepared him to become dependent on the collective ego and its solutions. Being now tempted to adopt one of these solutions, he needs to be aware doing so will only lead him to further problems. A person may also receive this hexagram when a particular fear initiated by a shock experienced in childhood has been reactivated by a smell. The smell reawakens a sense of danger, causing his heart to race and making him brace himself against the situation. In this case, it is the smell that comes to meet, telling him there is a real danger and he needs to pay attention to it. The sage counsels him to meet the situation by saying the inner no to his fear and asking the cosmic army to come to his help. He next needs to clear his mind and remain neutral within. Neutrality disarms aggressive intent through its inner effect on the transgressor. All aggression seeks to rob chi energy from the victim, either through arousing fear, anger, or hatred. When a person remains neutral within, no satisfaction can be gained through acts of aggression, and the aggressor is forced to halt. Incredible. Coming to meet also refers how wanting draws unpleasant events. Wanting occurs when we doubt that the cosmos will give us what we need. It is always focused on a particular goal, usually one which has been advertised as giving a person a successful self-image, becoming famous, rich, powerful. People with predatory egos set themselves up as the doorway through which those who want must pass if they are to attain their goal. What the person who wants does not see is that to get through that door, the predatory ego requires that he sell his dignity and self-respect. This fate is always the true price of wanting. The person who attains true independence through placing his dependence on the cosmos gets everything he needs. Other door openers that attract the egos in other people to approach and take advantage are fears that invite encroachments, self-doubt that invites others to dominate, and guilt that invites others to accuse the person or to load their burdens onto him. Self-images are also among the things which draw negative responses from others, often as projection spells and poison arrows. The self-image of the confident, capable person draws people who lack confidence and feel incapable. The admiration that these people profess is actually a disguised envy, since it is always associated with putting another up on a pedestal. As such, it is a thorn to that person's pride. It aggravates him until he finds a way of putting down the person envied. Thus, the person who admires another actually has a vested interest in the other's failure. His envy also constantly produces spells and poison arrows toward the one envied. If the person envied will free himself of his superior self-image and regain his modesty, he will disperse the envy of others and not be a target of their spells. Another aspect of coming to meet refers to a solution that, although one's intuition says it is too easy, nevertheless seems to fit every need of the existing situation. However, it has a hook attached in that it does not fit the true inner needs of the situation, which have to be discovered with the help of the sage. Line 1, it must be checked with a break of bronze. To be firmly correct brings good fortune. If one lets it take its course, one experiences misfortune. Even a lean pig has it in him to rage around. This line refers to a situation in which a person is blaming himself for having failed. The self-blame is out of proportion due to old memories of feeling insufficient or guilty. Thus, it rages around like a lean pig. Such raging, if not checked, leads to the misfortune mentioned. To be firmly correct refers to checking this raging by putting matters in perspective. This means recognizing that the self-blame comes from childhood conditioning to feel guilty when mistakes are made. This line informs the person that it is natural to make mistakes, and that he needs only to correct the ideas behind his mistake to bring himself back into harmony with the cosmos. If the person does not free himself of self-blame, the continued presence of blame will tempt him to adopt a grandiose self-image to compensate for feeling blameworthy. This line also refers to recognizing that impulses spring from back-of-the-mind suggestions made by imps in the person's psyche. These imps are groups of thoughts that have formed themselves around a particular fear, doubt, or guilt, and have taken on a life of their own. They need to be resisted with a break of bronze, meaning that the person recognizes the imp's presence and holds back from taking any action based on its pressure until that pressure has given way. The imp's pressure to act cannot be maintained in the face of 3 minutes of determined resistance. This is the 3-minute rule. Where the ego's attacks or, anything connected with the ego, like the imps and their spells, cannot last more than 3 minutes, cannot withstand more than 3 minutes of determined resistance to those thoughts. And they gradually diminishes over the course of 3 minutes in waves. The inner no is next said to the underlying phrases that are connected with the impulse. These phrases can be identified with the help of the RTCM. They need to be treated as spells. Some of these phrases are, you're not able to handle that. You're no good. You're not qualified. You're not authorized. You need an education to do that. You're born guilty, insufficient. And phrases that come from slanderous curses, such as you little devil, imp, bastard, etc. Other phrases have to do with indebtedness and guilt, such as You should be grateful to have your mother/father, and you owe them your life. This line also describes certain thoughts by which the ego seeks to reinsert itself after it has been eliminated. These thoughts need to be checked immediately by saying the inner no. Merely considering them would give them credibility and allow them to take over. Often such lean pigs enter as self-pity and can be heard as poor me. They create feelings of helplessness so that the person will listen to what they propose to do. Desire enters through phrases such as, it would be nice if this were so. Doubt enters through the phrase, why are things this way? Anxiety enters with something awful might happen, or when will it ever happen? Self-pity can enter merely with a sigh or a native image that comes to mind. Guilt can enter as a desire to be pure and show itself as an unreasonable fastidiousness. These first re-entry points of the ego are immediately followed, if not firmly resisted, by a train of secondary thoughts that have a commanding or demanding nature. These in turn are followed by blind impulses to do something. Line 2, there is a fish in the tank, no blame. It does not further to allow guests. Fish is a metaphor for any one of a person's inner senses. In this line, the mention of fish indicates that a particular inner sense has been demonized and therefore attracts unwanted elements from outside. The line can point to the presence of either self-doubt, which is created when a person's sense of wholeness has been slandered, or guilt, which is created when a person's sense of blame gets seized by the ego and turned into guilt. When self-doubt is active in the background of the psyche, it acts as a door opener that awakens in others the temptation to overstep the person's boundaries. It also invites in predatory aspects of the ego in them, thus the expression, it does not further to allow guests. Such people come with uninvited advice and curiosity, overstep the limits of the person's integrity with personal remarks, and tempt him to throw away his dignity by trying to please them or to succumb to their intimidation and flatteries. The remedy is to seek out the source of the self-doubt with the help of the RTCM. Usually, this is a spell. Examples: you are not good enough in and of yourself. You don't own your own space. Privacy is for the rich and powerful. Yeah, right. Who are you? Said with the implication you are not authorized. Examples of images are the image of yourself with enough space around you that is yours alone. Seeing yourself as always existing in someone else's space. The image and feeling that others have the right to come and go in and out of your space as they please. Images of being helpless, of not being heard, of possessing nothing while others have everything, of having had a bad start in life, of being born inadequate or guilty. Other images are of having rights and of being special. The guest can also refer to the collective ego's customary compensations for feelings of self-doubt and being helpless. It encourages the person to answer these feelings by developing a bravado that he is special, as is expressed by ideas that you are under God's special protection. You can do anything you want if you just do it. And you're special, you just need to recognize that. The fish can also be a metaphor for guilt that swims in the situation at hand, as when it is the underlying cause of an illness. In this case, guilt, which has remained unnoticed, sucks on the person's life force. Holding on to guilt, usually introduced in childhood, not only creates illness, it draws its complement, the guest of self-blame for being ill, creating a vicious circle of self-destruction. To break it, the person needs to rid himself of the primary guilt spell and say the inner no to blaming himself. Doing so will extinguish his fate. Another aspect of a fish that swims in a person's subconscious is its accompanying smell. This smell opens the door to other people's egos, allowing them to load their burdens on him. Such a person may feel guilty because he has been told that he is better off than someone else. He draws people who have created a fate to lean on him. His rescuing them from their fate creates a fate for him in turn. Such a person needs to say the inner no to all phrases and images that have made him feel guilty. Guilt is always bad, no matter the case, As a concept, as an idea, as a thought, guilt has to go. It has to go. There is never a cause for feeling guilty. That's amazing. That's amazing. Once you get that through your head, that you never have to feel guilty, no matter what, no matter what. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's a spell. It's not real. Line 3, there is no skin on his thighs, and walking comes hard. If one is mindful of the danger, no great mistake is made. No skin on the thighs can indicate that a person's true self has been hurt in childhood by having been put down by such phrases as who do you think you are? And you are good for nothing. Such a person may think he is guilty for one reason or another. Consequently, he's blaming himself. Self-blame keeps the wound alive, therefore prevents him from going on with his life. He needs to rid himself of guilt and self-blame. The line can also refer to a person who, because his pride has been wounded at a previous time, now shows sympathy to others whose ego pride has been similarly hurt. Such a person believes he is rescuing them, but he is only rescuing the egos in them. He needs to realize that the wounding of pride can only occur when people have developed ego pride. Their fates have the purpose of making them aware of the ego and its vanity. By seeking to rescue them, a person runs the danger of taking on their fates because he's preventing them from learning the lessons their misfortunes are meant to teach them. To free himself from his fate, he needs to rid himself of the self-images of being a wounded person and of being a rescuer of others who are wounded. This line can also refer to the person who has been identifying with the image of the superior man given in the traditional I Ching, and in doing so has created a fate. The fate is that the self-righteousness and the images of perfection and modesty that accompany the self-image of the superior man have separated him from the sage whom he thinks he is serving. He is thus left without the help he has expected. The danger is that he may adopt the belief that he is simply ill-fated. He needs to recognize that every self-image, good or bad, brings on a fate, because it prevents him from validating his true nature, because it's a self-image. It's an image covering up the true self. His fate can be extinguished if he will rid himself of the self-image. Line 4, no fish in the tank. This leads to misfortune. This line points to a person's view of himself that he is useless or that his life has no meaning. Life being the tank and no fish in it being his lack of respect for himself. Seeing himself as worthless leads him to believe that he will be cast out or judged badly by society. Given this view, he is only faced with two options, either to remain stuck in hopelessness or to develop hopes as compensation. Among the hopes may be the hope of being forgiven by God or miraculously being discovered by society to be worthwhile after all. Such a person is unaware that his view has been shaped by the collective ego's ideas, one, that his life needs justification, and two, that his life must somehow be validated, as by someone of high rank. To become free of his feeling of hopelessness and his holding to hopes requires that he say the inner no to these false ideas that come from the collective ego. No fish in the tank can also refer to a person who lacks respect for someone who is not developing his true nature. Respect in this case is the fish. His intolerance comes from having adopted the self-image of the superior man, as described in the traditional I Ching. While seeing the ego in others is certainly repugnant, the person is failing to see it in himself in the form of this self-image. If not corrected, it will certainly create a fate. Line 5. A melon covered with willow leaves, hidden lines, then it drops down to one from heaven. The melon covered with willow leaves refers to the tempter aspect of the ego that has tempted the person to do something against his nature. Then, because the act has brought humiliation, the ego has hidden itself as the cause by blaming the person's true self. You should have done this, or you should not have done that. This line can be given by the sage to inform the person of his inner truth, the hidden lines mentioned, so that he can understand the tactics of the ego and see to what grave endings it leads him. If he then combines this recognition with saying the inner no to the ego's influence, he will dislodge it, causing the ego to drop down from its high place in heaven as knowing what is best into his possession instead of its possessing him. Then his true self can take its place as the true leader of the personality, freed from blame. Line 6, he comes to meet with his horns, humiliation, no blame. Here is pictured someone who regards himself as a spiritual person who is above the world's tumult. I can't say that word, and thus displays an attitude of disdain and self-righteousness. Humiliation reflects the fact that he is experiencing a fate as a consequence, but feels that he is not to blame and therefore the fate is unjust. He also engages in conflict with whatever he thinks has given him the fate, God, the sage, life, etc. His fate can be ended if he will rid himself of his exalted self-image of being spiritual, the superior man, etc. He also needs to recognize the mistaken ideas and beliefs that have made him adopt the self-image in the first place. They consist of the phrases and images mentioned in the main text that made him feel inferior and guilty during childhood. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe out there. I hope you enjoyed it, and more of these to come. We're almost done. We're on hexagram 44. We've got 19 hexagrams left. Making progress, guys. I'll see you in the next one.